So now I would like to ask Bob Brackett, the director of the Institute of Food Safety and Health, to come to the podium to talk a little bit about the importance of the Midwest food industry to the global market. Please help me welcome Bob.
Well, thank you so much, Gail. I'm really honored to be able to kick off this second annual Midwest Food Matters Gala. This is something that was started last year, was a terrific success, and so I'm really happy to see the success that we've had tonight as well. In 1991, there was an author who, by the name of William Conan, who published a book entitled Nature's Metropolis. And so maybe some of you may have read that book. And in that book, Cronin described Chicago during the late 19th century as it was transforming from what was considered to be by many an unsophisticated backwater to what would ultimately become the global epicenter for food and agriculture. And in the book, Cronin juxtapositioned the image of this dirty old city together with the pristine views of the agricultural surroundings. And if you've been around Chicago, you see that there's a lot of that surrounding Chicago. The image as lush green farmlands that surround. And while many would see this contrast of urban manufacturing center compared to the production agriculture center, they would see this sort of as a contradiction, quite different, especially if you ask someone who's a farmer. But Cronin made the opposite point. And the point was, became what it was because of the immediate proximity of rich agricultural lands to the industrial might of Chicago, and that Chicago and the Midwest became global leaders in food and agriculture because of this. But of course, there were a number of other factors that fostered the development of agriculture and food within the region. And the good news is that those very same factors exist today and still lead to food and agricultural leadership in today's world, much as it did in the late 1800s. But I'm going to focus on three just for this evening. The first of these is geography. It is no accident that the Midwest food industry grew up around great cities such as Chicago and Minneapolis and Omaha. The close proximity of industrial capacity to a stable and plentiful supply of raw materials made it so much easier for the food industry to thrive and grow, and it did. In addition, the fact that the Midwest is right in the middle of the continent facilitated shipping and distribution in every direction, north, south, east, west. So it was a great place to be. The second factor is that the Midwest is blessed with enormous resources, both natural and otherwise. The Midwestern farmlands are among the most fertile and productive on the planet. But the food system depends heavily on water. Well, here too the Midwest is blessed to have an ample water resource in the region. And in fact, the Great Lakes themselves hold 84% of North America's and 21% of the world's surface fresh water. Very important to agriculture and food. And that doesn't even include the many different rivers and tributaries that run throughout the Midwest. Another underappreciated asset to the Midwest food industry is human resources. The Midwest is a vast reservoir of educated and motivated labor force. To many, the so-called Midwest work ethic, which I hope you've heard about, may be a cliche. But to those of us who grew up in this area and work in the Midwest, it's a tangible value, and it's a value that has benefited the food industry throughout its entire sustainability throughout this century. And finally, one resource that has propelled the region to the success is our transportation infrastructure in the Midwest. In the early days, our waterways and wagon routes moved our agricultural products around the country slowly. However, in the 1800s, we built east-west rail routes that traversed the Midwest, making Chicago and many other Midwestern cities crossroads for commerce. The Midwest is still a land and water transportation hub to this very day. However, we now have direct access to a global market through air travel, which is also quite anchored in the Midwest. And finally, I will consider the most important asset of all to the Midwest, and that is thought leadership. The Midwest is home to some of the best agriculture and food science departments in the world. This is where new food processing technologies are developed and validated. And this is where the current and future employees are educated. And these are the institutions that are where U.S. and Midwest food and agriculture leaders are born. But thought leadership doesn't stop at the gateway to college campuses, as you know. And this particular event is a tribute to the leadership, innovation, and discipline that is the Midwest food industry. The Midwest is home to both multinational giants with their access to global markets, as well as to many more. For instance, in the Chicago area alone, there are 4,500 small and middle-sized food companies who likewise lead, innovate, and even supply the large companies with some of the ingredients that they need. Together, the Midwest food industry, both small and large, account for about 25% of the total U.S. production, and so we do make a difference both domestically and globally. But what does all this have to really do with global marketplace? Well, the answer is everything. Where else can you find in any one region or place a combination of the perfect location, abundant natural and human resources, and the intellectual talent and drive to take the risks and innovate that is required in the food industry? Yes, there are many other places around the world that have a few of these things. They may have two of these things, but there is nowhere like the American Midwest that has the combination of all of these. It is why, since the 1800s, that the Midwestern food industry has defined and led the global marketplace in foods. And it is poised to continue that legacy if it so chooses. So as we go about celebrating our honoree tonight, I hope that you will also view this event in the spirit in which it was conceived, and that is, it's an acknowledgement of both the individual and combined contributions of an industry that has set the standard globally. And that industry is, of course, the Midwest food supply and industry. So with that, I thank you.